election.
Yeah. Here you go again, Thomas, just yakking. I'm turning the microphone on. That's all that there is. Oh, sorry, folks. This is Betsy and Thomas for the American Intelligence Media, and Thomas has been walking around here for the last 2 days telling everybody, I told you so. We scooped the story, and it's all about Manafort. Thomas, what did you scoop, and why is it gloat day for you?
Well, Betsy, I'm howling at the moon like a wolf. It's so clear. We said before, like any investigation or any commission that is ever appointed by Washington, D.C., it's always a foregone conclusion what they're going to say in the end. We predicted from the beginning that they would go after some low-hanging fruit, and that the one they'd go after most would be Paul Manafort because of some of his real estate dealings. We said this long before anybody. We also pointed out that the wiretapping at Trump Towers was done through Manafort's phone. That's a fact. We also said that the FISA warrants, both of them, had to do with him. The reason we know this is he's been under investigation for years, long before he came into the Trump camp. And remember, who is Paul Manafort? We say this again and again, and people don't listen. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Kelly and Black are the most powerful Republican lobbying force in Washington, D.C. Paul Manafort, his history is phenomenal. He helped place 3 presidents in office, and he did their campaign funding and management in some cases. He is a president maker. He went over to Ukraine. That's the reason that he was under investigation, and they had to have a FISA warrant because he was working in Ukraine with Yanukovych, both times that Yanukovych got elected. But the second time was after they'd already kicked him out once. Paul Manafort came in, rebranded Yanukovych, got him elected again. So this man has the power, even in other countries, to be able to affect public opinion in the most powerful of ways. He's probably the most powerful public opinion manipulator, lobbyist, they call them, which, that should be a dirty word. That should be a 4-letter word. But he's a lobbyist. He's like a Tony Podesta or a John Podesta. Here's John Podesta, the biggest lobbyist in Washington, D.C., in terms of money that they make and customers that they have, he has basically was the person along with Paul Manafort. After Paul Manafort, John Podesta came in and basically structured who would be in the White House, even giving the list of who should be put in appointment positions. Same thing with Paul Manafort before John Podesta. So what you're dealing with here is Robert Mueller is a very good friend of Paul Manafort. Remember that Wilmerhurst was the law firm, WilmerHale is the law firm that Robert Mueller and his group, out of his 17, 6 of the people are from WilmerHale, okay? WilmerHale is the most corrupt, or at least certainly in the top 5 most corrupt law firms in America, and that's who he worked for. He also worked for, before that, Robert Mueller worked for HSBC and Bridgewater. They worked for the most corrupt of all banks and brokers, and these guys are corrupt as can be, but they're friends. See, they're in with the in crowd of the money. So they know the hedge fund managers who can throw hundreds of millions of dollars at a campaign, and they know how to hide the money. They know how to take it into the DNC so that it isn't, or create now super PACs so that it isn't illegal, so that corporations can then give incredible amounts of money to manipulate elections in America. Well, that was started by Paul Manafort. He was part of the Mexican manipulation of election money, which Bush himself was actually tried for. And he got out of it because why? He had another Washington fixer come along and exonerate him before they actually even looked at all the facts, exactly as Comey did with Hillary Clinton.
So Paul Manafort is just one of the good old boys. He's just another one of the swamp creatures. Is that what you're saying?
He's one of the top ones. I would say that he is in the same league as Allen Dulles, the man who basically created the modern CIA, who was responsible for ordering the death of John F. Kennedy. At the same time, George Bush Sr. was right there along with Allen Dulles learning. So he became a president. But in terms of sheer lobbyists, we're talking, you're talking Fusion GPS, you're talking Stone, Manafort, Kelly and Black, the Podesta brothers. But then when you come to the DC fixers, the ones who are living with the top dog would be Robert Mueller. And this is the funniest part of all, because his very dear friend James Comey, who was basically his Padua learner, he was his apprentice, both when he was in the Department of Justice, he got to learn how Robert Mueller, when he was in the Department of Justice, just changed laws so that he could prosecute people without evidence ever being presented. And that's the reason there were so many good cover-ups during the time, like Waco or the Oklahoma bombing. Those were all covered up by Robert Mueller.
And not to mention 9/11.
9/11. This is hiding evidence. This is what Mueller is excellent at. Mueller is the best person to sweep evidence under the rug.
Oh, wait a minute,
in
and let's
Washington,
not
D.C.
forget the mainstream media that does not investigate any of this. So they get a pass with the Department of Justice and FBI, and the mainstream media is not there to look out for us either.
The newspaper articles, or excuse me, the alternative news articles, newspaper, what a joke to even say such things in this age. But the alternative news is jumping up and down, just screaming liar, 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 liar at CNN, at the Washington Post, at the New York Times. These groups who now are coming out with massive leaks from the grand jury impanelment that has happened with Robert Mueller. Okay, if there's even a single leak in a grand jury impanelment, it is no longer valid.
Now, you said that in an earlier audio this week. And then following that, I saw that Judicial Watch is taking this up. And they're very serious about calling out Mueller for the leaks within this special counsel group.
We've been screaming now for months. Well, since Mueller was appointed, it's nothing more than a Comey show. This is the Comey attacks against Trump are continuing. Comey is simply the best friend of Mueller. Mueller got in to save Comey, but now Mueller's credibility is now being shown to be as corrupt as it is historical. And so he is on the line now. That's the reason he is probably not going to indict Manafort himself. He's going to let Eric Snyder, let the Eastern District of New York, Eric Snyder, the Attorney General of New York State, a complete corrupt person taking money from Russians himself. He is picking up the Paul Manafort real estate deals done in his family, particularly helping his brother. That's the one that they have been investigating him for in this country. But before that, they were investigating him for what Paul Manafort did in Ukraine. And that is why there had to be FISA warrants. You cannot investigate the activity of a person in Ukraine without FISA warrants, especially since you are basically creating a counterintelligence spying network to watch Manafort. Why? Because there were lies again coming out of the Atlantic Council and Alexandra Chalupa, and the fact that they had to have damage control for the DNC being breached back in December of 2015. These things were laid out. Even Manafort, when Manafort came on, they used the Ukraine to create the lie that there was a $27 million payment to Manafort from Yanukovych using funds that were Ukrainian funds and that it was illegal. It was money laundering, and he put it in offshore accounts. That didn't happen. He was paid $17 million straight up. He brought it into this country. He paid taxes, but he also bought real estate. Some of the real estate he bought was a little shady because he was helping his family. So the New York State will probably bring the indictment against Manafort. Manafort will pay a fine. That's probably all that's going to happen.
Wait a minute, because essentially Robert Mueller and Paul Manafort are friends, so he's going to give his friend a pass.
Yes, and did you see that CNN reports that the very moment that Robert Mueller sent his stormtroopers into Manafort's house to seize materials, that he was told at that time, during that raid, that he was going to be indicted.
Yeah, right. Well, CNN leads this report, but they use anonymous sources. Wouldn't surprise me at all, Thomas, if they didn't use one of your citizen intelligence reports as their anonymous source. Now, before you go down that weed patch, hold on. All right, I want you to get focused with me here, because here's the
because I was going to go down that weed patch.
Yeah, I know you do, darling. But here's some questions I want you to hit on. Okay, so Manafort now is in the crosshairs of Mueller. Will this be what he's looking for to then say he did his job, he found the Russian collusion, and then close this investigation? Or will it continue on? And then answer this. Where do we go from here? Because the next thing I see is Susan Rice now trying to cover her own butt on some of the unmasking she did. So how is this all going to unravel? Come on, give us the prediction based upon your best experience and research and tell us what to expect as we go forward.
CNN didn't need to have any sources or any inside sources or anything. Those are all lies. You can tell by the way they tell the story and when they tell the story. Yes, they simply are arriving at it through logic, and yes, they may have read Anonymous Patriots or Truth News headlines, because we have been saying this for months and months and months. It's only simple logic. Susan Rice, of course, admitted that she unmasked Flynn because they said that they had transcripts of Flynn's telephone conversation. First off, lie. And my other point was lie. I guess I'm just going to have to just call these people liars because it's just constant lies. Constant lies.
That's what they are. And they soften it and they say, oh, that was misinformation or we misspoke. Hello, people. L-I-E, lie.
Before the guy on InfoWars said that Susan Rice had unmasked things in the skiff of the White House, that's stupid. That was her job. Okay, but we know that it happened because they came out and bragged that they had a transcript. They could only have a transcript of Flynn's conversations with a Russian if there was already a FISA warrant in place to monitor his phone, which there was, which we said months and months and months ago. The reason is because, and that's the reason there are rumors, and we've heard it reported even in mainstream media, multiple FISA court requests. First off, the fact that it leaked that it was a FISA court request is a felony.
10 years, I think. 10 years, isn't it? For
10 years. Paul Manafort's lawyer has written to the Department of Justice saying the fact that it has now reached the newspapers and that it was leaked that there was a FISA court warrant upon him, 2 of them, and when they were issued and for what, he's suing them. He has to sue them. This is defamation of character. Nothing was found wrong, but the fact that it was leaked as if it were part of some kind of Russian collusion because Yanukovych was supposedly pro-Russian leaning, which is complete nonsense. He was about 50, more like 85% of the time he was European Union leaning until Russia, Putin, made him a great offer, and that's when they kicked him out during the Maidan Revolution, which of course, remember, both the Orange Revolution and the Maidan Revolution that kicked him out were CIA driven along with Soros's humanitarian groups, Open Society, so on and so forth. So what we have there is Paul Manafort went in and against the CIA, against George Soros, against $1.4 billion that the State Department spent to put Nazis in power in Ukraine so that Hunter Biden and everyone else can go over there and take advantage of ripping off the oligarchs, the new oligarchs of a newly forming capitalistic, ex-communistic, ex-USSR satellite country. What's going on? Same ripoff is happening in all of those countries, and we've talked about that repeatedly. So Paul Manafort is a genius. So is Paul Manafort going to jail? No. Is Paul Manafort a Russian connection? No. That's stupid. 85% of the time he was against Russia when he was getting Yanukovych in power. So it's completely the opposite. Will he get charges brought against him in direct connection with Robert Mueller's investigation? Probably not. We predicted before, we're sticking with our prediction, that he will probably be charged with some real estate nonsense and that it'll be a fine. Why? Because he's an insider. Paul Manafort is the insider of insiders of insiders. He makes presidents. He's a president maker. He's like a John Podesta. Is John Podesta going to go to jail for the leaks that demonstrate that he was obviously involved with pedophilia? I mean, look at the art in his house.
Well, we certainly hope so, and I'm going to stay on this radio until I see jail.
Just look at the art in his house that demonstrates his intentions as a pedophilia whatever you call it, a pedophile. He's a monster. And what is found out with the DNC leaks and the Podesta leaks show that he was crooked. Everything was rigged. The entire election was rigged. The primary was rigged. The donors are illegal. It's the same old standard money laundering for presidential elections. And I just love it. I mean, Hillary Clinton yesterday came out and said it was the word that pizza and gate were put together. That's the reason I lost the election. Pizzagate. Just because of those two words. You see, they are so, just like Mueller. Mueller is going after who now? Michael Flynn's son. Michael Flynn's son was not part of Trump's team. Why would they go after him? Because they're going at all the low-hanging fruit, and they're letting everybody know, everybody they go after, that slams Trump. Are they letting anybody know who else they're going after? Well, are they going after the Imran Alwan? He's back in this country. He's got he's got a transponder on his leg, because he's been charged with some crimes, and now he's going to turn state's evidence for whatever. Have they questioned Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Have they questioned anyone in the Seth Rich family? Have they questioned anybody from
but
WikiLeaks?
We shouldn't know who they're questioning. We shouldn't know because this should be secret.
They always let you know.
Yes, they do.
If they're a Trumpite.
Oh, yes.
Because it smashes and bashes and smears Trump. Robert Mueller is nothing more than a lobbyist who has come in to smear Trump and to distract from the fact that if Comey had to go down, and we now know of his perjury, his obstruction of justice, the litany is as long as the articles that we've written about him. They're 30-page long articles about his crimes.
What about
Andrew McCabe has to go down at the same time.
What about James Clapper, who said back in March that there was no wiretapping? What happens to him?
I said at that time, when he said that, we clearly, from the conclave, said that is perjury.
Yeah.
Because he said it, well, first off, he said it in the networks again and again and again, the network news, but then he also said it under testimony. And when he said it under testimony, he was in contradistinction to some of the things that Comey and John Brennan were saying. So we know if there was a FISA warrant, they were listening to everything that Paul Manafort was doing. Okay, and this went on for years and years, and they renewed it, particularly right after Paul Manafort. They renewed it when Paul Manafort became part of the Trump team, and then they renewed it again when it came up, when its length of time came up, and they renewed it again because he was still somewhat associated with the Trump team. But Trump fired him 2 days after Trump was told that Paul Manafort had multiple investigations going on. The Director of National Intelligence, the ONI, the Office of National Intelligence, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the Treasury Department. Go figure. If the Treasury Department and the Office of National Intelligence and the NSA are involved, it's international. So therefore, it has to be a FISA warrant. It didn't take a leak to CNN or a leak to the Washington Post to figure these things out, folks. Just look at the systems that are in place, and as long as they're following the law, then you know what these results are, because that's the way that the system works. It's people who are ignorant of the system that believe the nonsense that is spread by these the mainstream media liars. It's pathetic, the lies that are coming out now.
Well, what about Susan Rice? She's a liar. She seems to be walking the streets with no problem.
Susan Rice was responsible for the death of 4.5 million people in Sudan, Africa. Never in history, Obama put her, unprecedentedly, never in history before has this happened, that she was in charge of all of the countries of Africa at once. And look what happened. She used that to have 3 nations go to war against Sudan so we could get the oil. 4.5 million people died in that. The wars are still going on. She was in charge of when Rwanda went down. She was in charge of Libya. She's a criminal. That's to begin with. So her unmasking Flynn, remember that all came out. That was their Benghazi-like story when it came out that Flynn went down. Remember also, there was no investigation. They talked to Flynn. Two FBI agents talked to Flynn, and also talked to the White House counsel, and then they told Trump, and Trump fired him. Okay, 2 days. 2 days with Manafort, 2 days with Flynn. There is no culpability there because no one informed Trump beforehand that there was anything going on. Now, they never showed Trump a transcript of Flynn's conversation, but they tried later through Comey to say that Felix Sater gave to Flynn a peace agreement that had lifting Russian sanctions as the key factor to peace between Ukraine and Russia. That is a lie. That document doesn't exist. There probably is no transcript, but they threw everything they could at Trump, knowing that he was new, knowing that he had no intelligence. Remember, he rejected the intelligence of the entire intelligence community, all 17 of them. He tested them. He called 4 of them into a secret meeting at a time that no one knew. He told them information, and within less than 15 minutes, it was leaked to the press. So either James Clapper, John Brennan, Admiral Rogers, or James Comey leaked it. That means they go to jail. So he knew immediately with his first meeting
I want people
that
out
they
there
were criminals.
to focus in on these 4 names. This is who we need to be watching, right? And
James Clapper has to go to jail.
Yes.
How many times could that man lie to the American public?
All right. So we've got that. Check in the box. Comey needs to go to jail. Check in the
Comey
box.
has committed crimes in front of anyone watching, even the mainstream media news.
Right.
Pay attention.
Right. People want
listen
to know
to his words.
People want to know when these folks are going to jail, Thomas. And the other thing they want to know is what's up with this spy ring in Washington. It looks like you've got Obama spying on anyone he could, and then you've got Imran Awan. Who's he spying for? Is he Israeli? Is he Pakistani? What is his network, and who's supporting his activities?
He's just a cheap, mob-like guy. He's a bad criminal. All of his crimes he gets caught for. He wasn't a success at any of them. And he will go down in a small way, and he will give as little as he has to get him to basically be exonerated of his crimes. Okay, so who was behind that? Well, first off, he was selling it to probably anybody. Guccifer II probably got his information through Imran Awan's proxy server that was set up in Raul Abbas's basement. A man who wasn't even paid to be a tech person on the Hill until very late in the game. Millions of dollars went to through Imran, but he was too busy running his car scams and his real estate scams and other things to actually do any work.
Well, I think most people know these details because we have a lot of listeners who follow George Webb throughout the unfolding. My question to you, Thomas, was not regarding all the details about Imran Awan. My question was, when are we going to see these people going to jail? Is Attorney General Sessions doing anything?
Well, yes. Once Trump chewed him out, he started to do some things. But he's a nice gentleman, but he's just not doing the job, and he needs to now step down.
Oh, wait a minute. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he is doing something, but he can keep a secret, and we don't know about it.
That is true. There are many investigations going on we don't know about. But the point is since he had to recuse himself from the very thing that is causing the most news, he can't do his job. Rod Rosenstein obviously appointed a friend. Rod Rosenstein is compromised also in this investigation. Robert Mueller is compromised. All of them have to go. There has to be a new establishment of the Department of Justice because the people who are there are crooked, they're rigged, and that they allowed through the Ethics Committee a Robert Mueller to come back in to be a special counsel shows that it's just another 911 commission. It's another Warren Commission on JFK's death. These are fake. They're fake. Those people who lead them are the worst of the fake. They're the worst of the liars. And the mainstream media is slowly waking up and having to admit, because what do I always say? Follow the money, follow the lawsuits. And sometimes we lose those lawsuits. But the fact that many people are bringing lawsuits for the Trump dossier, there's currently three lawsuits. With Paul Manafort, there's a lawsuit against the Justice Department for leaking the fact there was a FISA warrant. Judicial Watch or Freedom Watch is bringing a lawsuit against Mueller and saying he has to step down. They're bringing a lawsuit against the fact of Mueller leaking everything about the grand jury, both impanelments, who's being called and when and about what.
And are you kidding? I am even posting things on Truth News headlines where citizens are getting together and they are filing lawsuits against these thugs.
There must be lawsuits. That's the only thing that's going to work. And why? In the past, the White House, Obama, Bush, Clinton days, it was complete lawlessness. And they had the lawyers on their side. Just go back and look at any of the attorney generals of any of those administrations, all the way back to Carter, back to Nixon. It's the lawyers. It's the lawyers. Look at a James Baker III, one of the most corrupt people on the face of the earth. Look at any of the lawyers that represent these very, very corrupt people. So you have to now use law because why? For the first time in decades, lawlessness is no longer in control of Washington, D.C. The rule of law. His name is Donald J. Trump, president. He has brought the rule of law. And if he does nothing more than stand for the rule of law, then over time, and it takes a lot of time, the rule of law will come to bear. Now, for instance, the Robert Mueller investigation was supposed to last 3.5 years so that it still tainted the election for Trump for the next time. Okay? It's not going to. Why? Because too many things are coming out. When he attacks somebody, then the truth comes out. So their leak doesn't work. They're leaking to a propaganda machine, the mainstream media, that everybody knows is lame. It's corporate owned and run. It's completely biased. It's completely left wing.
Government propaganda.
It's almost radical left wing. It's
right.
We have a Loretta Lynch said, "Get out on the streets and resist." You have Valerie Jarrett and Obama. You have Obama's OFA putting 32,000 people on the street.
You're talking about Hillary thinking that she can, rethink this election.
Oh, because Hillary decided.
Right.
3-4 days ago, Hillary decided.
Right.
That she might just have to contest the election.
What we have here are a bunch of psychopaths running the country. Is what we have.
They became psychopaths because the American public allowed voted them in and allowed them to do these things right in front of their eyes.
All right. So now we don't want to run too long because I know you and cultural historian John Barnwell have a special segment you're going to do today on the alt left. Wrap it up, Thomas. Anything else we should know or should be watching for?
Well, I just want to say that we laugh, and I laugh at the Anonymous Patriots because I'm going to go ahead and just say this, okay, Betsy?
All right, go ahead.
Some anonymous patriots didn't believe me
when
I told them that Paul Manafort's the only person going down.
Yeah, folks, it was funny is because we do have discussions with other patriots because we want to make sure that we've thought of every angle, and they were quite holding on to Manafort being innocent, and you were quite happy to give him a call and shake him out.
Now I say now that, I didn't say then that it was only Paul Manafort. I said he is the one who will go down. And at that point, his name had barely even been brought up. I brought him up because I could see where this was going. Because when he had to release Flynn and he had to release Manafort, I had to investigate at that moment why. And when I investigated all into the details of Manafort's long history with the law and with the silly things that General Flynn did, and the fact that a man like Carter Page, never filed as a foreign agent, though he lived in Russia. These people made mistakes. But to then conflate all of these into that the Russian dossier is true and that Trump's being paid by Putin through his Trump Towers account. I mean, oh my gosh, those are all Comey manifestations. And we need to see Comey behind bars, and we need to see Robert Mueller eventually.
Oh, we don't feel good to just put these babies back in bars?
They need to be disbarred. If nothing else, neither one of them should ever be able to practice law again because of their perjury, because of their collusion, because of their obstruction of justice already from what we've seen in the public.
Yes.
So anyway, we need to remember, we are winning, but it takes a long time to turn a gigantic ship. You can't turn a ship on a dime. But when you have someone at the controls that says, rule of law, everything changes, then people get nervous and they start attacking the person who wants to have a rule of law.
Well, when are we going to hear about, when is CNN going to report anonymous sources that Dmitry Alperovich is someone that we should be looking at?
Well, Dmitry Alperovich will probably never get another job because, you see, he got the Trump effect. They used him. He came in December and set up the Russian accounts, which he then found when it was all staged in June and July, okay? He planted them. That's his specialty. He's a Russian. He basically invented that form of ripping people off and creating the ability for breaches and for hacks to happen, and leaving the footprints of old footprints, by the way, that aren't even used by the Russians anymore. By the way, the Russians aren't hacked anymore because we set up their tech city and we gave them the technology so that they're more advanced than us, both in weapons and in technology. They're not our enemy. We need to make them our friend. And then all that Hillary did...
Well, wait a minute. If we set all that up for them, then certainly we kept the keys to the back door on everything.
No, because the keys to the back door are owned by Michael Alperovitch, who is Dmitry Alperovich's father, and he has the encryption keys for all of the military, the entire military.
For the whole world?
No, just America. Obama made sure that if you were a Silicon Valley mogul, fake mogul, stealing the patent of leader technology and then using it for Google, Facebook, all of these giant systems, which actually are all based upon a system that Leader Technology took, which they got from Memex, which was a DARPA project. So Russia, when they got the new stuff, remember what happened. Obama, and no one wants to admit this. I swear, I'm like the only person who has ever written about this that I have ever seen, and that's that Obama said, we are going to now attack Russia with everything we have in a cyber attack. Do you remember that, Betsy?
Yeah.
Okay, he did, and guess what Russia said the next day? It was useless. And what did then they admit some weeks later? That America's best cyber attack, ordered by the president as a reprisal for supposed Russian hacking and Russian hacking of the DNC, Russian meddling in the election, and Russians controlling Trump during the elections and making Hillary lose. We attacked them with the largest cyber attack in human history from America, ordered by a president, all agencies. It had no effect upon Russia. Russians can hack us anytime they want, and they have, and they will continue. But worse than that is they don't have the need, the intention, and they would get nothing from it they don't already have. We gave them the technology. Why would they need to do that? They don't want to disturb us. They want to be our friend. China wants to disturb us. China has hacked us more than anybody else in history, and Dmitry Alperovitch blamed it on North Korea until finally China admitted that it was China, and then they came and made an agreement with Silicon Valley, not with the NSA, not with the DOJ, not with the Department of Defense, but with the Silicon Valley moguls, that China would no longer hack them, no longer hack the corporate digital warlords. These are warlords that we're talking about. And we're seeing the rug pulled out from underneath them because of Trump standing for the rule of law. Again and again, they just had their first losses in the longest time. Silicon Valley is on the way out, folks. They're going to have antitrust and monopoly suits brought against them. They're going to have to pay taxes or leave this country. They're ended. They're ended. And then it will be admitted that just like Russia, what did they just find out? And they just admitted. And what did WikiLeaks just say? WikiLeaks just said, Russia controls everything on the internet ruthlessly. Hello? America says they can't. It's not possible. You can't control the lines. They all exist in everybody's computers, and there's no such thing as the internet. There's no wires, there's no cables, there's no nothing. And the federal government doesn't monitor them. That's the lie we're told. No. China, Russia, Turkey, any country that wants can control everything on the internet. Facebook, everything. There are simple, Vault 7 proves that, okay? So Russia does it, and we can do it. We can stop Islamic terrorism in this country. Radical Islamic terrorism can be ended tomorrow. Anonymous showed that. Anonymous on one day ended the account in America, broadcasting in America. And by the way, everything in the internet is controlled by the governors, the Board of Broadcasting Governors, and the global engagement center. We can stop anything we want. On one day, Anonymous came out and stopped 10,000 radical Islamic terrorist sites in this country. We could stop all of them tomorrow. And this was admitted by the people who have just resigned. Larry Lamkin, the head of the Global Engagement Center, just admitted that he was doing this during the election. And now, when he admitted that, then Zuckerberg had to come out and say, oh yes, I just discovered, just now, $100,000 was spent on 470 accounts to put out fake advertisements. Those were done by us. That was our propaganda, and that's the reason all the people in the Global Engagement Center have resigned, and the reason they admitted it to the public, and the reason Zuckerberg had to come out. These are all controlled lies. We need to realize that the lies of the mainstream media needs to end just like newspapers. They need to end just like magazines. And we need to all find that the real fourth estate must do their duty or go to the guillotine.